Affidavit of Nikki Mendoza. My name is Nikki Mendoza. I am 45 years old and have lived in Arcadia for 15 years. I was born in Saipan in the Northern Mariana Islands. When I was born, the islands were a trust territory of the U.S., but in 1986, all qualified residents became U.S. citizens. It was a proud and happy day for me and my family. Like most people on Saipan, I learned to speak English, but we spoke a different language at home. Because I wanted to study aerospace engineering, I moved to North Carolina at age 18 to attend North Carolina State University. In 1992, I moved to Arcadia Utopia, where I worked for Boeing plant, designing business jets. In early June of 2013, my nephew Gabriel Torres came to live with me to attend high school before applying to college. Although there were several high schools on Saipan, there's only one four-year college, and it has very limited options for a field to study. It is not uncommon for families to send their children to schools on the mainland. I've never married and never had kids, but when my sister and her husband asked if Gabriel could stay with me, of course I said yes. It had been 10 years since I had seen Gabriel. He was very quiet when he arrived at the airport. He was smaller than I expected and seemed a bit awkward, but I figured he was just shy. After all, Arcadia is quite different than Saipan. The whole island only has 50,000 people. I could see how Gabriel could feel a bit overwhelmed, but he soon got settled into his room and was happy I had provided him with a computer. As Gabriel became more talkative, I could see he was very bright, particularly in math and science. He was very interested in how machines were made, especially tanks, airplanes, helicopters, and various types of guns. He seemed to have a particular interest in military history and tactics. He had studied U.S. battles in the Pacific during World War II in great detail. That wasn't terribly surprising given the major campaign that took place in Saipan in 1944. But Gabriel's passion for the subject was pretty intense. I wasn't concerned, though. Gabriel enrolled in the 9th grade at Arcadia High School on August 26, 2013. He had to take quite a few placement tests, and he did well on them, placing him into several honors classes. Making new friends, however, proved to be a bit more difficult. Gabriel's shyness and awkwardness persisted, and he couldn't seem to find a group of friends that he clicked with. I encouraged him to invite classmates out for pizza and a movie when he turned 14 on September 12th. But he said everyone he invited was busy or couldn't come. He seemed pretty sad about it. I hated to see him feeling so discouraged, so I suggested he check out some of the school clubs as a way to make friends. Gabriel joined the history club and the chess club, but it didn't help much. When I watched him interact with the other teens at school, I noticed he didn't seem able to really carry on a conversation. He did not engage in small talk, and if he got started on his favorite subject, he talked on and on, but not noticing if others were losing interest. I just figured he was trying too hard to fit in as the new kid in town. Then in spring of 2014, one of his classmates mentioned something called CAP, the Civil Air Patrol, an auxiliary of the U.S. Air Force. The CAP supports after-school programs for youth to help them develop character, fitness, and leadership skills, and they can learn how to fly. Gabriel excitedly joined the patrol at Arcadia High, and he was soon busy working to advance through the ranks. At last, he seemed to have found his niche. He even went to a one-week summer camp. Gabriel's sophomore year started off smoothly in the fall of 2014. A few friends sometimes came over to play on computer games or do homework, including Blair Benjamin and Sydney Singh. I didn't get to know either of them very well, but Gabriel seemed much happier. Happier, that is, until the spring semester. That's when several terrorist attacks overseas and in the U.S., attacks that were carried out by members of ISIS, became big stories in the news. For some reason, a few kids at the school got it in their head that Gabriel must be Muslim, and they started giving him a hard time. I guess these kids, like many people, feared those who were different from them. Gabriel wasn't Muslim. Most people on Saipan are Catholic. Not that it matters. As I told Gabriel, people should be seen as individuals, not judged based on fears and stereotypes. But no matter how much Gabriel tried to talk to the kids, they wouldn't listen. Gabriel came home with bruises and torn clothes on several occasions. He said the kids would shove him and yell, "Go back overseas where you belong. We don't want you here." Gabriel said they never did it when teachers were around. I wanted to talk with the principal about it, like the school handout suggested, but Gabriel begged me not to, saying he could handle it. Yet after a few weeks of the bullying, Gabriel started to withdraw and stay in his room after school. And one time he was hauled to the principal's office and suspended for 5 days for fighting, which I thought was outrageous. Yet Gabriel still begged me not to intervene. I wasn't sure what to do. I wanted to respect Gabriel's request, but things weren't improving. Then I had an idea. I knew Gabriel was a good writer, even if he had trouble conversing, so I suggested he write a blog. He could talk about airplanes or other aspects of World War II, and maybe he could help his classmates see that he wasn't so different from them. Gabriel seemed to like the idea, and soon he started a blog called Weapons Guru. He would pick a topic such as what was the most effective firearm during World War II, and then he'd go into great detail giving his answer. He seemed much happier. When I periodically checked the blog, most of the comments were positive. It gave Gabriel a way to interact with the others who shared his interests. In early May, I got a call from the school counselor asking me to come in for a conference. When I got there, she told me that she thought Gabriel's social difficulties might be due to more than shyness, that he was exhibiting possible signs of a developmental disability. She recommended that Gabriel be evaluated by a psychologist, Addison White. I was a bit surprised, but I made an appointment with Gabriel to see Dr. White on May 15th. Dr. White spent nearly 6 hours interviewing me and Gabriel and conducting tests. At the end, Dr. White met with us and Gabriel and said Gabriel had been diagnosed with a developmental disorder called Asperger's syndrome. As Dr. White explained, individuals with Asperger's syndrome have difficulties in social interactions because they do not recognize social cues. They may also have intense and focused interest in narrow topics, carry on long, one-sided conversations on those narrow interests, and be physically clumsy. The more we talked, the more I felt that the diagnosis was accurate and explained a lot of the difficulties Gabriel had been experiencing. During our discussion, Dr. White noted Gabriel's blog was an excellent way for him to learn how to engage with others. However, Dr. White suggested I monitor it in case the posts or comments were inappropriate or should be deleted. Dr. White recommended that Gabriel return for a follow-up appointment to take part in social skills trainings and other therapies. Dr. White said she would send the testing results to me as well as Gabriel's parents. She also asked permission to send the results to the school, and of course I said that was fine. I did not sign any paperwork about passing on the results, though, and we never met with anyone at the school to go over the report. Gabriel seemed subdued when he got home. I'm sure the whole thing was a bit of a shock to him, as it was to me, but I reminded Gabriel that he was doing well in all of his classes, that he was clearly a bright and motivated person, and that this diagnosis did not change any of that. He could use his strengths and interests to succeed in school and in his career, and hopefully the social skills training and support would help him make more friends. But Gabriel didn't seem too entirely convinced. I encouraged Gabriel to keep writing his blog, and I checked in on it every week or two. In mid-June, he blogged about some of the weapons used in recent school shootings and gang attacks. I knew he was just writing on a topic that interested him, but others viewed it differently. A few comments got pretty nasty, accusing him of planning some sort of racial terror attack. Gabriel got pretty upset, saying he'd show them not to talk about him that way. I urged him to calm down and told him it would be better to write about less controversial topics. When he finally calmed down, he said he just wouldn't write anymore at all. I didn't think he meant it at first, but when he hadn't posted any more blogs, by the end of July, I quit checking. Gabriel started attending monthly social skills sessions with Dr. White beginning in June, and they seemed to be helpful. At least Gabriel did fine at his summer job at the office supply center and didn't have issues getting along with the coworkers. While he was working there, Gabriel took on interest in 3D printers and he begged to get one. I told him they were too expensive and we just couldn't afford it. But then I found a kit online for a 3D printer you could build yourself. I decided to surprise Gabriel and get it for him for his 16th birthday. Given his interest in engineering and now printing, it seemed like it would be a perfect gift. Gabriel seemed happy enough when school started back up on August 25th, and soon he was busy with homework, history club, and CAP. Everything seemed to be going well. When he opened his present on his birthday, he was speechless. He gave me a hug, the first time this had ever happened, and started putting it together right away. By the weekend, it was finished, and he was excited to try it out. At first, Gabriel just made simple shapes, but soon he progressed to items a bit more complicated. He even printed parts to build a simple model airplane. Gabriel brought the plane to school to show his friends at CAP, and he came home happier than I'd ever seen him. Everyone was really impressed. He invited his CAP friends to come try out the printer, and Sydney came over several times. Gabriel told me they were working on the remote-controlled airplane, and he showed me the plans. It was based on the open-source flying wing design, although he was modifying it a bit smaller than the online version. Gabriel was really excited about it. He talked a lot at night about how fast and far it would fly when it was finished. I began to think he might follow my footsteps to major in aerospace engineering. But Gabriel seemed upset after Sydney's visit on September 30th, and he wouldn't tell me why. Sydney didn't come over after school for the next few weeks, which was a huge change. Gabriel was withdrawn at dinner. When I tried talking to him about the model plane, he just looked away and changed the subject. He'd go right into his room after dinner and lock the door. I figured maybe he'd had a fight with Sydney and assumed he would be okay after they worked it out. I gave him space and didn't try to pry or force him to talk to me since he clearly didn't want to do so. The next thing I knew, on October 13th, I got a call from the school principal telling me that Gabriel had been arrested for bringing a weapon to school. I was stunned. I didn't know what to think. I left work immediately and drove to the police station where I found Gabriel handcuffed and crying, saying he'd been pepper sprayed for no reason by Officer Carter, the school resource officer. His eyes were all red and puffy from the after effects of the spray, and he was almost too distraught to talk. I confronted the police captain, who told me that the student had reported seeing seeing a gun in Gabriel's backpack. When the SRO found Gabriel in class and asked him to hand over his backpack and come to the principal's office, Gabriel supposedly refused to comply and reached for his backpack in a threatening manner. Reportedly fearing for the safety of everyone in the room, the SRO sprayed Gabriel with pepper spray, handcuffed him, and dragged him to the principal's office. An hour had passed while the principal decided what to do. Finally, the principal called the Arcadia police, who sent an officer to take Gabriel to the station. SRO Carter went with Gabriel. After they had gone to the station, the principal finally called me and told me Gabriel had been arrested. I also learned that the police had tried to question Gabriel without me or an attorney being present. Gabriel was still crying and reportedly wouldn't talk to them, so they left him sitting alone in a conference room, handcuffed to a chair. I was furious. I asked if they'd found a gun, and they showed me the 3D model. It was clearly not a working gun, more like a child's toy. I asked if Gabriel was going to be charged with the crime. They said, no, not at this time, but get him out of here now before we change our minds. They were rude and demeaning the entire time, and at no point did they apologize for the way they had treated Gabriel. As we were leaving, I heard one of the officers mutter, "Watch yourself. Better yet, go back to where you came from. We don't want your kind here." When I turned to see who had spoken it, SRO Carter stared at me in a hostile manner, so I'm pretty sure that's who I heard. Gabriel was still in pain from the pepper spray when I got him home. He showered and changed clothes, but his eyes were burning for hours after. Of course, I called his parents right away, and they were shocked. They talked about him flying back home, but I encouraged them to wait a bit, as it was just a misunderstanding. I intended to talk to the school principal, and surely they would apologize for overreacting. To my shock, instead of apologizing, I received an email from the school late that evening saying Gabriel had been suspended for 10 days. I tried to arrange a meeting with the school principal, but every time I tried, I had to leave a voicemail. She never returned my calls. Gabriel didn't want to return to school anyway. He grew frantic at the mere suggestion of it. Then Gabriel told me he had been receiving threats in comments on his blog that he had been called a terrorist and other things too terrible to repeat. Typewritten notes with similar threats were stuck in our front door late at night, and someone egged our car and slashed the tires. When I tried to file a police report, an officer came to take a statement but said there was little he could do. When the suspension was over, Gabriel told me he had had enough and he begged to go home. His parents agreed, so I sadly helped him pack his things. I was heartbroken at how Gabriel had been treated. It just wasn't right. I told my friends at work about what happened. Some said they knew of other students who had been pepper sprayed at school without justification. Some sent the links to news stories, and it looked like they were right. The SRO and Arcadia Police had mistreated students before, especially minorities or those with disabilities. I was appalled when I became a citizen. I learned about our rights under the U.S. Constitution. This behavior needs to stop before others are traumatized. That's why I'm filing this lawsuit. Gabriel's future has been ruined by an overzealous police department, and they should be held accountable. They're supposed to serve and protect people in Arcadia, not abuse them. No one else should have to go through what Gabriel endured. Of the available exhibits, I am familiar with the following and only the following. Exhibit 4, Gabriel's blog. Exhibit 5, the 3D model of Gabriel's gun. Exhibit 6, the 3D plane Gabriel tried to make. Exhibit 10, the letters from the Arcadia High School when Gabriel was suspended. Exhibit 11, an article in the Arcadia News and Record. And Exhibit 13, a handout on bullying that Gabriel brought home from school.